Welcome to Creative Tien channel. I'm going to do a tuck stitch today, and the tuck stitch is kind of unique to machine knitting. You can do a tuck stitch by hand knitting too, but with machine knitting it's much faster. And I'm going to show it on my LK150 knitting machine again, and you can see I already started some. The tuck stitch creates texture, and you can decide which needle you want to do the tuck stitch. And if you are new to machine knitting, I will show you the basic tuck stitch setting on a knitting machine. In the LK150, to do the tuck stitch, you move from number 2 to number 1, and also do it on the left side. So that means when you are pushing the needle to the D position all the way out, you will not knit back, and the yarn will just lay on top of the needle. And then we change the setting back to number 2 for standard stockinette stitch knitting. And you can do it on both sides, or you can just do one side, depends on your design. And then knit a stockinette stitch row, and that will finish up that stitch. So those 2 or 3 yarns will be knitted. So let's try it here. I have 10 stitches, and I will knit a few rows of plain stitches. And the carriage setting is to the standard stockinette stitch. So this lever will be in number 2. And the same on the other side for stockinette stitches. Now we are going to do a tuck stitch. You can decide which needle you want it to be tucked, and usually we do it in a regular interval. So we can do, for example, 1 here and 1 here. I pick the 3rd stitch from both ends and push it into the D position all the way out, and I change the setting from number 2 to number 1, so you will not need a D position needle. The same here, switch to number 1. So let's knit 1 row. If you see closely, the yarn is on top of the needle. You can knit this way a few times, but with tuck stitch, if you have too many strands of yarns on top, it will be difficult to knit, and you might have a dropped stitch. So usually we keep it about 2 or 3 rows maximum for the tuck, and change back to the plain knitting. So I will try 2 more rows. Now we have 3 yarns on top of the needles, and I will change the setting back to standard stockinette stitch. Change the lever back to number 2, and I will knit 1 row. Now the tuck stitch is complete. You can see it's here. And then you can knit a few rows of plain stitches, or you can continue the next tuck stitch. I will knit a few more rows. And for the next tuck stitch, you can do it in the same location. Here I can do the 3rd stitch from the 2 sides, or you can pick a different one. Usually the stitch is in between, so you can make a pattern. Let me try doing the tuck in the same location a few times and see what it looks like. And I have 3 rows of tuck. Change the setting, and then 3 rows of plain stitches. You can see the 4 tuck stitch here. And the tuck stitch shows the pattern much better in the back side. The front side is only a little texture. It's not very obvious. So let me do one more time. Change the setting. 3 rows. Change back to plain. 3 more rows. Next, I want to alternate the location. So I will have one in the center, and the next one will be on the outside and then center. And you can also have 2 stitches next to each other, but there's a limit on how many tuck stitches you can have next to each other. When you have too many stitches together, it's very difficult to knit after a few rows. So you can always test it out first to see if it works with your yarn and your tension. So for the center part, I have 2 stitches out. Change the setting and knit 3 rows. Change the setting, knit 3 rows. Now I'm going to the next tuck stitch. Same as before, I will do the 3rd stitch from either side. Change the setting, 3 rows. Change the setting again, 3 rows. Now I'm going to do the center tuck stitch again. So I have the center 2 stitches. Change the setting, 3 rows. And we will keep repeating those 2 tuck stitch positions. Now we are going to do the 3rd stitch from the sides, 3 rows. Now we do the center 2 stitches. Change the setting. Now I'm going to do 2 color tuck stitch. So I have my 2nd yarn threaded through the yarn mast, and I will move the 1st yarn out of the carriage and just hang it somewhere below so it's out of the way. I will thread the new yarn and add a clip or some weight. And I will only use the secondary yarn for the tuck stitch rows. I want those stitches to be tuck, so I switch the setting and knit 3 rows with a secondary yarn. Now I have 3 rows, but I want my carriage to be on the right side. I can pick up the carriage and move to the right, or I can just knit 1 more row. And now I'm going to switch the yarn, take the 2nd yarn off the carriage and thread it with the 1st yarn, and we'll knit a few rows. Change the setting, and I will knit a few rows. That's what it looks like. I knit 4 rows, so it's on the same side as my other color yarn. And now I'm going to switch the yarn again. Take the yarn off. Now I'm going to do the tuck stitch again. Now I will do the center 2 stitches. Change the setting. We'll do 4 rows. Now we change the color again and change the setting back to plain knitting. I need 4 rows. And we change the setting again back to tuck and change the yarn color again. Pick the location of the tuck stitch and we'll knit 4 rows. And we'll switch yarn again and keep repeating these 2 tuck stitch locations, and we'll create a pattern. And I'm going to bind off with both color yarns. You can decide to use just one color and cut off the other one. So that's the back side of the two-color tuck stitch. You can see the pattern. If I make it longer, you will see it better. And this is the front side. It looks kind of like a bubble stitch because it's a little bit raised. It has a raised texture. And of course, you can change the dimension of the height and the density. Depends on where you pick the needles for the tuck stitch. So that's the two-color tuck. And here we have one-color tuck stitch. There's one in the center and then two on the sides. One in the center. On the front side, it doesn't look much difference. You see a little texture, but basically it looks like a plain stockinette stitches. And I also did some tuck stitch that's more densely located. And I have two needles next to each other, so it creates a stronger 3D texture. I only have one plain row in between the tuck stitch, and each tuck stitch is 3 rows. And here is the tuck stitch in the same location. So you can see a line here. So there are a lot of variations you can try with the tuck stitch and create interesting textures. This is the front side. That's the tuck stitch on the same spot, the same needles again and again. I hope you liked today's video. Thank you for watching and see you next time.